more people in the class attending the whole thing, right?
And I guess also the benefit is that it should be available after.
Yes, yes. We're doing an online, I'm taping everything, actually. Here. We're going to be filming everything. And then repurposing it for like classroom sessions that people can learn online with. At the same time, this is something that we're doing in collaboration with Factor. Big shouts to Factor because they're the ones who funded this whole thing. So we're also going to be providing the video so that Factor can see what we're doing over here and, you know, even get some like feedback from you guys after to see the results of what we're doing here, right? So, my name is Kofi Carmichael. A lot of people publicly know me as Friday Ricky Dred. I'm a podcaster, and I'm going to teach you guys how to start a podcast. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to go to the point of what to do once you have your podcast, right? So, like the social media aspects, you know, getting around to all the different maybe radio stations and just putting that word of mouth type of message out there to let people know about y'all podcast. I'm not gonna be doing that part, but all the way up to like, you know, the idea of like what a podcast is and what you need, all the different materials and all the different ways of getting your podcast uploaded to even have your first one published. This is what I'm here for. Okay, so just to start, how to start a podcast, just do it. All right? That's it.
That's a good start, yeah. Right. Press go.
Class done. All right, I'm out of here. But, okay, no. There's more than one way to start a podcast, right? I'll tell you the way that I started this podcast, the We Love Hip Hop podcast, and the network, right? For the people who already know, like, the We Love Hip Hop podcast has been around for about 5 years. I've worked in the music industry for about 20 years as a manager, artist, executive producer, putting out albums for multiple artists in the city. I've worked in the promotion team for multiple, for different record labels, Sony, Warner, independent labels, just pushing stuff across Canada. So I've been in the music industry, let's say about 20 years, right? Why I started a podcast is because I love podcasting. I consume podcasts, right? I consume podcasts more in just in the audio format. So a lot of people, when they watch podcasts, they're like, they feel that this is a podcast, what they're seeing on YouTube, right? What people are usually seeing on YouTube is the video reproduction of a podcast, right? I'll give you guys a little bit of a history. Podcast was previously known as an audio blog back in like the 80s, okay? And then when the iPods came into to play, the Apple iPod back in the days, then they took that concept of an audio blog and mixed it together with the fact that people now have the thing called an iPod, and it became podcast. All right, and that was like in 2004, right? Some of the first podcasts, was like a lot of news stuff, sports stuff, but there was no videos for any of these podcasts back in the days. Like people were just listening to them in their iPods, right? So I've been consuming podcasts myself since 2012, I would say. Comeback Jack, Dante Nero, The Brilliant Idiots, hosted by Charlemagne the God and Andrew Schultz. Just listening to podcasts, to read, right? So from there, and then blogging and doing all the different things that I do, somebody suggested on Facebook one day, hey, you should start a podcast. I said, okay. A few days later, took my phone, asked to use a place called the Vapor Central over on Yonge Street, that used to be on Yonge Street. And they let us use the spot, they let us use a corner of the spot, and it was pretty loud in there. There was The Simpsons playing on the TV and all types of stuff, but essentially I just wanted to record us having a conversation, right? So for a lot of people who want to start podcasts, if you don't have a love for content or podcasting, it's going to be kind of hard. right? Like if you're starting because I see these guys have a show, so I want to do one to counteract. The lifespan of your show might not live long enough because you don't actually consume and, you know, have different benchmarks and examples of people who are in the game podcasting, like a Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan has been podcasting for what, 12 years plus? So when people go and like take a listen or a watch of his podcasting, it's like almost like a clinic on how to podcast, right? The conversations flow nicely. The audio is crisp, so even if you're not watching it and you're like in the other room, you could still hear everything that's going on, right? So all these different things are super essential in having a proper podcast. So we'll do a little podcast example by the end of this course here. That's why I have all these mics hooked up and everything. But for everybody else who wants to start a podcast, for example, any of you guys, just get something where you can record on, right? There's different things that you're probably interested in that you and a group of other people are interested in as well, right? So when you start having conversations with your friends that are like-minded in these certain things, you record them, you now have a podcast, okay? Here's the thing, you have it and it's recorded, how do you get it out to the people? There's a few different ways now that have come along the way. For me personally, I started off with a SoundCloud account, okay? The thing with SoundCloud, there's a limitation on the amount of uploads that you can have, right? A lot of people originally are using SoundCloud to upload their music. They're uploading MP3s. You could upload hundreds of MP3s, albums, everything. However, now let's say you record a 90-minute podcast. By the time you get to episode 2, they're going to tell you that there's a limit on your cloud. So technically, there's a price of entry for podcasting, right? From my experience, right? $16.99 a month. I paid for my SoundCloud Pro, and I'm able to now upload as much as I want. Okay. The second thing that I got, because I'm like, okay, I'm only on SoundCloud. How do I get on Spotify? How do I get on iTunes and all that, right? And I'll give you guys also a note. Now Spotify offers uploading of your podcast for free. Okay. It'll distribute it through their platform that they have to maybe about 4 other platforms, but there is still limitations because it's a free upload that you're getting. Yeah. Okay, so what I found out when I hit that wall of, okay, I'm only on SoundCloud, but all the podcasts that I love are on iTunes, you know, I'm hearing about Spotify at the time, I'm like, how do I get on these platforms, right? I did my Googles and I discovered Audio Boom. Audio Boom, for you as an artist or for anybody who's an artist, is the equivalent of like TuneCore or CD Baby, but for content creators or for podcasters. So with the $9.99 that I pay a month for that, I'm able to distribute my podcast now using the RSS feed from my SoundCloud. And for the people who, that's like a lot of like technical jargon. These are different things that when you're going through these steps, these sites show you how to do it, right? But with the SoundCloud link that I have, I was able to put that through Audio Boom, and now I'm everywhere, okay? When you're doing a podcast though, or at least with us, we started off with just conversation between us, right? There's guests that we've had over the years, and we could get pigeonholed into only being an interview-based podcast, but that doesn't have to be, there's no way of doing one thing, all right? But if you do want to start doing a podcast and you want to have interviews going on and everything like that, you're better off maybe getting a space or like trying to find somebody who you can use their space that's not your own private space that you can do your podcast, right? But not everybody has that option or anything like that. So if you want to start from the crib, start from the crib. My point is just start, all right? But as you advance and you want to start getting people in, you might want to pull some resources together and get a location, right? mind you, I haven't gotten to the microphones and any of that type of stuff yet, right? I feel when we get to that type of stuff, that's when we start getting into the more intermediate level, right? Obviously, you see what we're using here. We're using RE20 microphones, all of the different like things that are the standards for recording vocals and stuff like that. But there's cheaper options. You can record right into your laptop. And then there's post mixing that you can always do to clean up everything else like that, right? The only thing is when it comes to doing podcasts, and I guess the main point of my whole session right here is there is no actual rules, right? Once you have your fundamentals, you know what you want to talk about, or you have a passion just for having conversation. Period. You have your recording devices. Like I said, we started with a phone, right? As you start putting out the podcast and it starts building your audience and everything like that, then you can start thinking about, okay, what kind of microphones do I want to get? You know what I'm saying? What kind of cameras am I going to get? Because all these different things now, you're going to have to start getting the people who can control it, start building your staff. So once you have the fundamentals of just having maybe 2 microphones or just your phone to start recording, you're good to go, right? And your uploads to SoundCloud, Audio Boom, you're good to go, right? Obviously a YouTube account for when you're starting to get into the videos. Everybody has a YouTube account already. You have a Gmail, you have a YouTube account, all right? You guys want to try doing a podcast now?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do one. Okay, so let's set up some microphones around here.
You want this one up?
Or is it you want me to just come to the end? Is that what you do?
Okay, so let's see. Who will be our
This
host?
is her mic?
Yeah, that's her.
All right.
Who wants to be the host? Because I'm already a host of a podcast. I don't need to be hosting anymore. What about you, Samantha? I see you smiling in the back.
Oh man, no.
Your host?
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we can start an episode about, let's say, we'll do something like a trending topic that's going on right now. All right? As far as like with hosting, it's pretty simple. You introduce your topic, and then you have discourse with the guest, right? So let's say, let me think of a good topic that's going on right now. Young Thug denied bail. No, I want a better one than that. Give me a second.
I'm going on social media right now.
Oh yeah. What's trending?
Give me a.
Are we going like music related? Is that
No, I want something that's a little bit more relationship and music at the same time.
Oh, relationship and music?
Yeah, like spicy,
Oh, I can't do both.
like mixy, just dirty shit. I shouldn't be cursing in my classes, but whatever.
No,
Sorry,
please-
Factor.
Please don't. Other people grab.
like
Please.
shade room type mixy?
Yeah, shade room mixy.
Okay.
Let's see what's on Shade Room. I just posted something about that story with the Texas woman who dashed the mother, allegedly dashed, no, she got arrested, so it's done.
Mhm.
She dashed her boyfriend's mother's remains into the water. The
Oh.
video that you may have seen may have been like a remake of maybe what had actually happened, but that's what's gone viral. So it's brought more light to the case of the boyfriend cheated. She took the mother's things, dashed it into the river. So she's been arrested.
Okay, so
So that's drama.
Oh.
let's do that. So, sorry, give me your name again.
Very, very easy, yeah.
Prezi? All right, so Prezi, introduce the topic. I'll pull it up on the screen. I'll do the production.
So usually, I'm just trying to think like, okay, so the topic is talking about remains and.
Yeah, the headline is viral video, right? That highlights where a lady throws ashes after, lady throws ashes out of the urn into the river. Authorities haven't confirmed that the lady within the video is to be the person who originally did it.
No, stop that.
Oh.
All right,
Why did you go on 6 views? Why are you embarrassing me so go on 6 views? Why are you embarrassing me? Yeah, that's why I mentioned it.
Be a 6 views TO.
Originally from Tweaky. I don't know where the video originally came from, but.
All right, Freddie, so introduce our topic. We have.
Okay. So how far is too far when someone has either cheated on you or you've been cheated on? Is there limitations to that? Do you guys think that there's no bounds? It's free game, or just I don't even know. Like, yeah, is there limitations to cheating? Like when it comes to it, like when you've been cheated on, like what do you?
Yes. This is nonsense. Okay.
So in this sense, we see obviously that this woman has been cheated on and she's throwing her ex-significant other's ashes over the bridge. And she looks like she's having fun doing it, to be honest. Like she's smiling. She dumped the whole urn.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Dumped the whole urn. And she
did the hand wave. Whoa!
So my job here is done. I don't have nothing. This is it. Like if I'm cutting ties with this man,
dust on her hands. It blowing in the wind. The remnants. Oh my god!
This is a different type of level of foul. Because if you're in a relationship with this girl, that means you knew the situation of the mother, the family, whatever. And
some red flags.
There's a lot of red flags. A lot of red flags involved here.
So so even to push this conversation forward, have any of y'all ever been in a scenario like this where this girl is pushing, like throwing ashes over the thing, like not exactly throwing ashes over. What I'm saying, has somebody done this to you, or have you done something that crazy to somebody else?
I've been in a situation where there was this one girl that I was seeing at this time, early like high school days. She cheated on me, which is the crazy part.
Whoa.
And she decided to basically burn my clothes. So I had some Nike sweaters, some dope Nike sweaters. She decides to send me a video of.
What did you do?
The thing is, I broke.
She's fighting over there. She's jumping.
Why did she cheat and burn the clothes?
Basically, it's because I didn't want to stay with her.
Wow.
I was ready to leave and cut ties because she was.
Okay.
The relationship was basically coming to an end. I was ready to call it quits. She was trying to draw me back in, and I did a little bit of taunting. At this point, I was hanging out with some other girls, and then I had this girl that I was seeing at that point, kind of texting her, sending pictures of us together.
Okay, so you were moving.
Wow, so I was moving on, but I was being very, very open and letting her know, like, I'm moving on. Like, look who I'm with now. Da 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 da. You cheated on me. So what is there left to do? Yeah. So then now she sends me a video of her burning my clothes.
Oh my god.
And she basically says in the video, or underneath the caption of the video, play with fire and you're gonna get burned. Oh. And I'm just like, you could have sold those clothes, you could have gave those clothes, you could have kept those clothes. Yeah. Those are some dope ass clothes. But you decided to just burn that shit.
What ends is she from?
Say you said, I dare you.
Nah, not even the eastern. It's like, well, east side Toronto, but like, I'm gonna just say Sherburne area. We'll just say this is a long time. This is like high school, but nonetheless, like, that was the furthest I've ever seen somebody go to show that how upset that they were. But when I was the victim of being cheated on. But they were upset at me for wanting to move on and leave.
So then how do you feel about this woman?
This is way too far. There's so many different ways that you can go about. I feel like when you're being cheated on, you should just be able to say, you know what, this relationship is either gonna continue to move on or we're gonna call it and you went out of your way to videotape it. So now you're looking for some type of clout. You want everybody to know that you did this. And this is something you can't come back from. You can't come back from this. You're going to be known as the woman who throws deceased parents over a river.
What does she gain from that?
I don't think it gets any more disrespectful
So,
than that.
so quick, fast, and not to interrupt you, Prezi, because you're asking a lot of questions. What about you? Have you ever done anything that crazy or close to that level of crazy?
Is she rocking?
You're picking.
For the listening audience, she's rocking back and forth.
Definitely some weirdos. Not burning, no destruction to property. I've seen a lot of things happen to other people. Let's not get into that real deep.
And what about you, Samantha? Has anybody ever been so mad at you leaving that they're like, oh my, I'm gonna slash your tires?
How do you know? How did you know that?
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
It's my podcasting psychic ability.
Just came right through. Okay, he still hasn't admitted it to this day. I have confronted him so many times about it, but he will still not admit it. So we dated for like a year, and it just wasn't working for me. I just had this like vision of needing to be alone and do my own thing, and there was nothing against him. We were good. It was just not the time for me. So I expressed that. He didn't want to let go, but he had to because I was gone. And then weeks later, I noticed a key mark on the side of my car.
Whoa.
And this was around the time of Halloween, so I was like, okay, maybe it's just like kids being rambunctious, like Devil's Eve, you know, like that kind of energy. So I was like, okay, all right. And then a week goes by. My car is at the same house. My best friend at the time, I was just like spending a lot of time with her. And the other side of my car was keyed. And then my tire light went on, and I was like, what's going on here? And so I was like driving home, trying to like get home before my tires blew out. And I was like, okay, the wheel's shaking, and I'm like, I need to pull over right before going over the Burlington Skyway. I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull over. I pull over, look at my tire. It's holding on by like 3 inches. 3 inches, and it's just like it would have fallen off if I went over that bridge. Like, I don't know what would have happened. So yeah, I call him, confront him. He's like, I would never do anything like that to you. He's a mechanic, okay? No one knows to puncture the valve stems of the tire, and that's what had happened on 2 of the tires, both sides of the car keyed. But at the same time, like around the same time, I had won a radio contest, and this like crazy girl that worked with my best friend kind of gave me the answer to the radio contest, but like she was just like telling the story and was like, the answer to this contest is hamster wheel, like, and yeah, so she was like calling in trying to get it. She never got through, so I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm just gonna play the contest too now that you've given me the answer. And she's like, was certain that was the answer and like all the clues. So I set my alarm to wake up, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna call in and see if I can get through. I didn't get through the first call. The second call, they answer, I get it right. They're like, you won $14,000. So it could have been her, or it could have been the ex. I don't know.
Maybe combination.
I still don't know.
What if
Yeah,
they-
neither
they're
admitted,
forces?
right?
The key seems pretty feminine. The tire, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
masculine.
Point directly for something only mechanic would know.
Yeah.
Right? I know.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. I'll give you all one quick one before we wrap this segment here. Facebook. What's before Facebook? High Five? You ever heard of High Five?
Yeah.
This is like an app like around the MySpace times and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. I've had a fake version of Facebook as well too, but you know I had an ex that I left, or actually I got caught cheating. Sorry, and she wasn't too happy about it, so she made a fake High Five profile of me, all right, as well as a fake MySpace. Had me took one of my profile pictures from my original MySpace account, and had just, this guy has like multiple diseases. He will cheat on you. Just craziest, just the wildest, most insane things that you could put in somebody's profile. With me smiling, holding like a stack of money. All right. So yeah, people will do crazy things. Wrap the session and let's end this podcast.
Well, yeah, that concludes our segment on cheating. I don't condone cheating. If you're in a situation where cheating is happening, honestly, just leave. Don't waste your time. Just up the situation and move on. Buy better. Do your own thing. Or get back. Some people it's different.
No.
You gotta do your get back.
But be accountable.
Exactly.
Yeah, be accountable with your get back at
Be
least.
accountable. Make it make sense as to why you're doing it.
All right. Thoughts and prayers to all parties. So see, we basically we had a podcast episode. That's pretty much all it is. We had a conversation. It's on audio. We recorded it. And if, we want to chop it up and distribute it, that's done. It's not really that much pressure. There's not like it has to be this or it has to be that. You know what I mean? For example, we came up with there was a trending topic that was going on. We talked about that, right? If you guys are into politics or if we're in a room that's a bunch of sports lovers, we might end up just having a whole 2-hour sports conversation. But boom, as long as we're recording it into some type of recording devices or anything, we got a pod. I think I'm done with everything I got to say. You guys can pretty much get the gist from there.
That was probably the best concrete example that we can probably get.
Yeah, just do it.
I think a lot of the times, most people kind of overthink and say, where do I start? It's like you said, you just kind of gotta just throw yourself in it. If you have a passion for something, just kind of immerse yourself in it. Usually the biggest step is getting over that fear of holding yourself back to do something that you want to do.
Definitely. So, any questions before we end the session here?
I was wondering one thing.
And the questions don't have to only be limited to like the how to start a podcast. Like if you guys have any questions for me for like my experience of what I've been doing with the network and just building a studio, all that type of stuff, feel free to ask. Talk to me.
Yeah, she was gonna go and then we'll go next.
Okay, so I wanted to know if you were trying to make a podcast with someone in one location and then someone, I don't know, somewhere else. What's the best thing to use for that?
Google Meets, Zoom, right? For example, big salute to two guys doing a podcast, right? They're up and coming podcasters. One guy's living in Brampton, the other guy's living in Oshawa, okay? And every single day they're putting out clips of their podcast on YouTube. Every day they do an episode, right? Because they just, after work, they get on a Zoom call together and they record it that way, right? As long as they get a good audio as well and have engaging conversations. Don't get me wrong, they don't have thousands of views, but one of their dozens of views is consistently me, because I'm just like, they're having great conversations, right? And because it was formed during the time when the pandemic first started and nobody was linking up, that was their solution, all right? So
Anchor is also another one if you're doing it
Yes.
by distance. You can use your phone for Anchor, record it directly onto your phone. The auto usually, it's not clean, but it's loud enough. I'm not gonna say it's clean at all. But at least with Anchor, I think if you pay for it, it still has like a distribution that you could get as well.
and also to Anchor is the service that I mentioned earlier that Spotify is also offering if you want to do free uploads of your podcast. Right? It's through Spotify, through Anchor, or Spotify Anchor. Right? Bo, you had a question?
Yeah, you guys have been really consistent for a long time. I kind of had two questions. One would be like if someone's saying they want to do a podcast, I think what a lot of people do is they end up making one or two podcasts and then you never hear from them again. So how important for you is that consistency? And my second question is, in terms of promo, like, what do you do to, now that you've made the podcast, get yourself out there? Because I think a lot of people would be more consistent if they felt people were listening.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so first with the consistency, you got to figure out what your schedule is going to be, right? If you feel that once a week is going to be too much for you, then don't take on that task of trying to link up with your friends to record something once a week. Because once you miss that 1 week, then you start losing motivation. Okay, you know, by next time you guys link up, it's a month, right? But if you're gonna be like, okay, we can get together every 2 weeks, you make that happen, right? But every 2 weeks, you put out your episode, you record it, you put out your episode, and you stick to that schedule. If you could do 1 week, way better, right? But you stick to that schedule no matter what the views are, right? And then that's where you start building that consistency. You start building the practice of even having conversations on camera, on microphones, so that by the time you get to episode 20 or 30, you're already good at having conversations on camera or on microphones. I'll give you a quick example. For us, we didn't get noticed until episode 47, when we had Bizz on. For the people who don't know Bizz, rapper from the West End, crazy wild persona, right? Like he does that, like literally, right? And we're 47 episodes in. Before that, we had a lot of like pretty prominent people in the industry that we've already interviewed. But maybe it was a good idea that people didn't notice us until episode 47, because we weren't really as good at interviewing people yet. Not to say that we were great at that point, because we're 275 episodes in now. So my interviewing skills on episode 47 were like minimal compared to where I feel like I'm at now, right? But that's all about the consistency, right? We wouldn't have been able to get to that interview if we weren't recording 47 weeks consecutively before that, all right? To answer your question about the promotion part, which when your course starts, that's when you're gonna come in, right? Social media, right? Set up every single type of account that there is to be had, okay? For us, we're on everything. We have a Snapchat, we have a Twitter, we have a TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all of those platforms. Multiple accounts. Shandy handles 6ViewsTO, which is one of the accounts that we have on Instagram, right? There's the We Love Hip Hop page and my personal page and the Visionary Arts Center page. So that's 4 Instagram accounts that are all even like around the same thing, same people, right? But at the same time, I'm also posting simultaneously or syncing my post to Facebook. I'm tweeting the episodes once it's on YouTube, which technically is a video upload site, but it's also a social media platform at the same time.
They have stories and
Yeah.
react to things now.
Yeah, you got your community section on YouTube. Basically, when it comes to like getting your podcast out, to me, the recording of it, once you figured out how to record it, is the friggin' easy part. Right? Now, like going from obscurity to actually being known is where it, not difficult, the more tedious part, because you have to work. You have to be relentless. You have to be. Sometimes I get like a little bit neck pain over here because I'm doing this all the time. I'm always in my phone, right? But when I'm in my phone, I'm not playing. I'm literally working, right? Because every 3 hours, 4 hours, I'm thinking, oh shit, I haven't posted on Instagram. I go on our page. If I see we haven't posted for 5, 6 hours, I actually get anxiety. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, what are we doing? We're slacking. Nobody's seeing us in the feed, right? So, and I've said this multiple times over the years, if you are a user on Instagram or any social media platform, whichever one you prefer, and you're a content creator and you don't see yourself in the feed and somewhere when you're scrolling, then you're fucking up, right? Because if you're able to use the app as a user and be on it for hours and hours, why aren't you posting? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, promoting social media is the easiest part.
One thing you
Or the easiest thing.
mention is like editing. Is there any editing done in podcasts, or you kind of get what you get and that's what goes out to the world for audio?
Now, from where we are now, we do a lot of post edits. Like for example, what we're recording now, even like our mock podcast that we did there, it's all running through my mixer right now. But like I said, when we started, we just started with the phone. And like with stuff like Spotify, I keep on forgetting it. Anchor. There's ways of mixing even through your uploads now from raw uploads. However, getting a nice little mixer, you know, some post-production cracked software that you can use to like, you know, maybe make your sound a little bit clearer, you know, maybe reduce your room noise and stuff like that. Those are all essential things, because you got to understand, in the end of the day, it is an audio experience. So if you're listening to like if you hear the first few episodes of our podcast, there's a lot of room noise, all right? So definitely there is some mixing involved. In the beginning stage, I wouldn't scrutinize it as much. Just get the content done, right? But do know that at some point in time, people, if you want to build your audience and have your audience like stick with you, you're going to want to make sure that you have a clean audio, a nice sounding audio, right? So yes, you can start with the phone, you can start with this like a couple of cheap mics, but don't end there. You know what I'm saying? Like keep on working on and striving on upgrading the different pieces of equipment that you have around. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't happen in one day. It took us years to accumulate all of this equipment, all right? But there's definitely some post-production that's involved.
And don't use that like as an excuse to not start if you don't have that.
Oh, fuck no. Start now and then like figure out that part later, right? Because like if you're making good content and like people are starting to become engaged, all those things will come too. Opportunities will come. People will be like, hey, I'm digging your stuff. How can I help to get you guys to a certain point, right? Like, we didn't originally start with the money to purchase these mics. Like somebody who's believed in us and said, hey, how could I help? You know what I'm saying? I like what you guys are doing. You know, throw a little money and help you guys. You know what I'm saying? On top of like us like being able to start building an audience and, you know, do different promotion things, different things that we can do to try to accumulate some money from podcasting, all right? If you guys want to know how to make money from podcasting, that's a whole other course that I can get into, but there's advertising, right? A lot of audio podcast or audio podcasters, they're getting ads. They're reading ads in the beginning, a pre-roll, a mid-roll ad, right, and an ad near the end from different companies. I found out about Squarespace from listening to podcasts, Manscaped from listening to podcasts. Yeah, right. Blue Chew, all these different things I'm hearing from people like doing podcast reads, but a lot of the times those people are, you know, saying, hey, depending on the level of your audience or the amount of people you have in your audience, here's $1,200 to read this ad, or here's $600 to read this ad, or here's $2,400 or $5,000 to read this ad, depending on who you are. Like The Read, which is like a super popular podcast, okay? Up to this day, they still don't have video. Okay, they've been around for more than a decade. No video. They're rich. You know what I'm saying? Like they just get ad money out the ass all the time. Like they're always reading an ad, but it's because their audience is so huge. And the thing is, what they say about podcast like listeners, and don't quote me exactly on the quote, but like they say like even like the intelligence levels and stuff like that of podcast listeners are like on average higher than like people who are just viewing content. You know what I'm saying? Because the attention span to listen to like a fucking 2-hour piece of audio that you're getting no video So now people are able, the advertisers see that, they're like, shit, I can fucking put a bunch of messages into these people's heads at the same time. You know, where do I send the money, right? So, you know, once you got a podcast that you're building a good audience, you know, there is sometimes where you can run into some advertisers that might not want to advertise with you if you're a little bit crazy on the microphone, but it doesn't mean you don't get crazy on the mic. Just do you, and you'll get the advertisers who will fit with what you're doing, right? Other than that, like obviously if you're making a YouTube video, you can, you know, benefit from the YouTube monetization program once you have over 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. So there's different ways of making money. Us also, we do repost promotion because we've built up a social media presence, so a good enough social media presence where people will pay to get their music videos reposted on our feeds and stuff like that. And it also provides us another source of income to put back into equipment, different things like that. All right? So there is money to be made even at the beginning level of podcasting.
When you're interviewing an artist, how do you conduct your research? Because you could be on like one level where you have a basic understanding, and you could be like Nardwar, where you know every single thing about them for some reason.
Depends on the artist. If it's somebody who I've never interviewed before, I've never had a conversation before, and they're also accomplished like a ridiculous amount of things, like they've been in whatever industry that they've been doing, like let's say 20 years, I'm gonna go through as many interviews that they already have out there in the world and listen to them answer questions and maybe try to fill in the blanks of questions that they might have not had asked them before, or questions that they've not given like, they haven't expounded on in the other interviews. I'll find a way to get a more elaborate answer out of that person, all right? But like, when it comes to artists, I'm listening to music videos or watching music videos. I'm listening to their Spotify. Just basically just consuming the content of that person for 48 hours. It usually takes me about 48 hours. And then sometimes I'll do all that research and then read 2 questions off the paper. All right? Yeah, we'll start talking, you know what I'm saying? Like, by the time we have a conversation and like my curious brain is already like, okay, well, I want to know this, I want to know that. I look back at the paper and I'm like, okay, those are the questions I already wrote too, so good. And 90 minutes later, let's get the hell out of here kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I have a follow-up question though. Do you
Talk
think
to me.
it's more important to talk about like controversy surrounding someone or music? Or like what do they prefer and how do the audience react to that?
It depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on the kind of content that you're trying to put out there in the image, right? In the end of the day, obviously controversy sells and everything like that. But if you're not trying to have that type of image that's going on in your show, then you could have a conversation about mental health. And if your audience is into that, then that's what they're going to consume, right? They're not going to need the drama to be entertained by the content that you're making, right? Obviously, yeah, it does help, but it doesn't help always in a long-term game. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times, even sometimes we'll use like salacious types of like pieces of content to like draw traction. But if that's all we had at the other side of it, then like people are gonna tune out after a while, right? But if that brings you in so that you can go watch an engaging conversation or get educated on an artist that you never heard before, once you click the link in the bio, then you know the medicine has been put in the candy. You know what I'm saying? Any other questions?
I think I have a question to piggyback off of what you said. I'm just trying to look at what it was
And what's going on, man?
So when you're like bringing on, let's say an artist or somebody who has like major influence, are you Like, are you reaching out to them? And if you are reaching out to them, with somebody who's usually getting thousands of inbox messages and things like that, like, how do you actually reach that person so that you filter yourself through that noise and then convince them to actually come to your show?
That's a good question, man. Like, the one thing is trying in the first place, right? A lot of times people get intimidated because they see somebody who has a check mark and they're like, well, fuck, they're not gonna answer me. Well, fucking DM them and see if they will, right? So that's one, just trying in the first place, right? One of my earliest interviews that I've ever done is with a group called Smith & Wesson that I used to listen to back in the days, 90s rap group. I was listening to them in the car like 2 weeks before I actually asked them about the interview. I heard they were in Ottawa. I was like, let me just DM one of them and see if they'll answer. And they answered, right? But that was by fluke. I was lucky, right? I've tried other things, like I'll send a person a DM and then I'll jump in their comments, check your DMs. Yeah, it's corny. People are like, oh my God, you're a bugaboo, you're gonna do that? Yeah, I want the interview. You know what I mean? I don't care if people look at it and they're like, oh my God, you look stupid asking this guy in the comments. Okay, but when I'm sitting there doing the interview with them, how stupid am I gonna look then? All right? And that works sometimes. The person sees it, they're like, who's this person? Especially if your follower count is pretty high, now you're gonna float higher in the comment count or in the comment views. And then the person's gonna see you there and they'll be like, okay, well, check my DMs. You know, they'll go through your profile. Hey, I like what you guys are going on. Sure, I'll come on your show. All right? Just making the attempt in the first place. A lot of people are just, they're like, that person has 100,000 followers or they have 1 million followers. They're not going to answer me. You never know. They might not be busy today. Yeah, you just got to try.
They allow the perception of the numbers put them back.
Yeah. Like, I've DM'd Kim Kardashian. Like, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? If I could see if you're in town, I will DM you. Or if you're gonna be coming to town, or you're talking about Toronto in some type of way, I'm in your comments. You know what I'm saying?
Also, sometimes depending on like what kind of person it is, on their other channels, they'll tell you how to reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if they're using YouTube and they're also using Patreon, maybe you can get on Patreon and see what's the best way to reach this person. They may not make it accessible on Instagram.
Yeah.
It might be a specific place they want you to reach out to them. It might be WhatsApp. And you keep missing the opportunity. And you keep saying, okay, here's my number, WhatsApp.
Yeah. And there's also entourage, right? You got, like, for example, I don't know. I'm not going to use Drake as an example because he barely does the interviews, period. But let's say if we were going to use him as an example. You could DM Drake out over and over again to see if he'll actually see your DM, or maybe you could DM Chubbs, right? Maybe you could DM Hush, or any of the guys that you see around him, Future the Prince, you know what I'm saying? Because, or OVO Nico, like they're all these people who are following him. Go through these people's follower accounts. Who are these guys even tagging in or hanging out within their post? I'm sure they have way less followers and, you know, way more room to be able to see your DM than the person who you're trying to get in touch with. Also, building relationships helps you to be able to, you know, shrink that 6 degrees of separation to be able to get to the person you want to get to. All right. I mean, that answered the question. That was your question, right?
All right. So we're done with questions so far? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see a lot of
So let's I'm going to wrap up the class, and yeah, thank you. And we'll take a smoke break and all that good stuff.
All right. Snap over that.